This is one of 2 heat pumps in Daphne Sheaves' home. She has 2, something confirmed by this receipt, but up until last week was paying for 3.
So in October of this year, my first payment comes out. And the payment that came out was for the $14,000 loan, not the $9,000 loan.
Sheaves bought the units through Atlantic Standard HVAC, a St. John's heating and cooling company. But efforts to rectify the problem with the company went nowhere. In part, she says, because they were impossible to reach.
That's a deal, for 12 years. I pay now, I'm done.
Edward Tolinar has a heat pump now, but not from Atlantic Standard. It almost was, though, enticed by the company's 12-year labor warranty. In early 2023, he decided to go for it. But after a handful of canceled installation appointments and a last-minute change in his quote last winter, Tolinar says he became suspicious and decided to stop by Atlantic Standard's office.
It was just abandoned, so we went home. And we were talking about it, that this is just not feeling correct,
Tolinar called the company financing the purchase just in case.
And then she was asking, so there's nothing installed? I said, no, nothing installed. No equipment on site? I said, no equipment on site. And then I learned, as she came, said, okay, we already paid the whole amount to Atlantic Standard on January 3rd. And she said, because on January 3rd we received a form signed that the installation was done.
Luckily for him, he could quickly prove it was impossible the work was done, at least not then, because he got his mandatory inspection completed that very same day. But even some customers who did get their promised products are facing frustrations.
Just noticed my machine rattling. So after looking underneath, there's no bolts put in any of the mount.
I was having issues with my dehumidifier settings. Sometimes I get error codes that come up on my unit, and I've had issues in the past where the unit just wouldn't work. It wouldn't be blowing, or if it would be heating, it would be blowing cold air. If it was cooling, it would be blowing hot air.
So this summer, Carly French started a Facebook page and quickly realized that she wasn't alone. Others also needed to access their warranty, but the company appeared to have gone underground.
I'm constantly getting texts and calls and messages, and there's definitely a lot of very upset and very frustrated people.
French says the financing company paid off her loan after extensive back and forth over issues with her machine. Meanwhile, the owner of Atlantic Standard says he paid it off. French says she's kept the Facebook page open so that customers have a place to communicate. This is the man behind Atlantic Standard HVAC, 36-year-old Raymond Kalonga.
The day's going well. Today was a tough day, I tell you that, kid.
His YouTube channel, a sea of motivation, bombast, and the art of the sale.
People in this world, they either wait for an opportunity or they create their own opportunity. A lot of your decisions are based on procrastination.
We reached Kalonga by phone twice in January.
When the wheels spin that fast, sometimes control is lost, and things don't go the way that we aspired for them to go.
He said he was no longer taking on new Atlantic Standard customers, but was working hard to make things right for his existing ones, and had a deal with a third party to cover that 12-year labor warranty. One problem, the president of that company says no such agreement exists. Asked about that in a follow-up call this week, Kalonga indicated that work remains underway on a solution.
There was many satisfied customers, and from a portfolio of 1,000, you're probably going to find 100 customers that have come together and stated that they're upset about X, Y, and Z, but you're also going to find 500 customers that are like, you know what, my service was top-notch.
Raymond Kalonga chalked up the failure of Atlantic Standard HVAC to a multitude of issues, including the inability to retain quality employees and the unintended consequences of being a pioneer in offering customers 12 months no interest, no payment. He also says he experienced racism from former employees and customers. He also says he went to police on multiple occasions and in one instance had his work vehicle vandalized with a racial slur. But he says that company debts and customers will be taken care of. About 1,000 customers in total.
There is not a company that I've had previously that, whether it's restitution, whether it's outstanding invoices, whatever the case may be, have not come later on to be paid in full.
That, it turns out, isn't true.
You guys need to look to the person to right and left and say, I got your back.
Because before there was Atlantic Standard HVAC in Newfoundland, there was Canadian Standard Home Services in Ontario. Different name, similar business, a company with a litany of outstanding debts. A former Canadian Standard employee is owed around $100,000. Porsche over $82,000 for the leasing of a luxury car without ever making payments. In Oshawa, Kalonga's company owes the Ontario Ministry of Labour over $30,000 in relation to employment standards. But the largest amount and the biggest legal problem for Kalonga came down just last month in an Ontario courtroom. 2 weeks ago, Justice of the Peace Linda DeBartolo described Kalonga as deceitful. He and his former company faced dozens of charges under Ontario's Consumer Protection Act for door-to-door sales tactics that were false, deceptive, and misleading, and left some consumers with liens on their homes. And despite cutting a deal in 2019 to plead guilty and pay victims back $400,000, Kalonga returned a mere fraction, then stopped coming to court. Because of all of that, he was handed a $525,000 fine and sentenced to 525 days in jail. That's after the Crown Attorney told the court that Mr. Kalonga has presumably left Ontario but remains a risk to Canadians. Back in Newfoundland, Kalonga faces more legal problems, another list of creditors. Garage owner Norman Nab was one of them, was owed over $4,000 for work he did on Kalonga's business vehicles. Took him to small claims court and says he was eventually given these checks that the bank said were no good.
They're mostly the ones you gotta watch, the smooth talkers.
Days after CBC contacted Kalonga about this story, Nab got his money back, in full, in cash. Others, not so lucky. A warrant of committal has been issued for Kalonga in Ontario for his detention and is now active. But Kalonga says he's not going to turn himself in. He says he missed court because of illness within his family and says it will all be sorted out. Kalonga says he intends to appeal. A decade ago, a younger Raymond Kalonga was cut a break, staring down a potential jail sentence after pleading guilty to conspiring to traffic cocaine. Kalonga convinced the judge he was reformed and on to bigger and better things in his life. The judge decided on house arrest instead of jail time.
2 years of house arrest is not easy as well, but I feel that it's quite credible because, of course, I'm not a danger to society.
Now, 10 years later, Kalonga could be heading to jail anyway.
You'll never see me back again.
Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.